Dear Minister Kang Kyung-wha, Ambassador Kang Kyung-wha, esteemed heads of missions, dear colleagues, I am honored to introduce Her Excellency Mrs. Kang Kyung-wha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, joining us live for the 2020 edition of the annual meeting of Romanian diplomacy. At this year's reunion, we are focusing on the impact and challenges which the current pandemic brought in relation to our diplomatic activity and on foreign relations in general. The Republic of Korea deserves being cited as a bright example of how to manage a crisis and a long-term challenge, such as COVID-19, within a mix of strength and constraints generated by geographical and societal particularities, but also how to use the communication policies in getting people aware and willing to contribute to the common effort to mitigate the spread of the virus. Dear Minister, let me share with you in this context that Romania and the Republic of Korea enjoy an excellent bilateral relationship, which was just confirmed by our phone conversation that we had a few minutes ago. A bilateral relationship which is consolidating every day, building on the strategic partnership established more than 10 years ago, as well as on the shared commitment of enhancing trade, business, and people-to-people contacts. I am glad that in spite of the restrictions we all had to face and accept in the COVID-19 context, the dialogue between Romania and the Republic of Korea continued in the almost same dynamic manner. Ladies and gentlemen, in this context, I am pleased to introduce Her Excellency Mrs. Kang Kyung-wha, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, the first ever appointed woman in the Republic of Korea to this position, whom I had the honor to meet on the sidelines of the ASEM ministerial meeting in Madrid in December last year. And we had, as I have mentioned, an excellent phone conversation a few minutes ago, emphasizing the joint will to continue enhancing our strategic partnership, enhancing our diplomatic dialogue. I'm glad that Her Excellency accepted once again the invitation to pay a visit to Romania as soon as the conditions will allow, and at the same time to continue exchanging views, to continue to promote the trade between us, to continue to promote the investments, to continue to promote the cooperation in the field of nuclear energy, which is extremely beneficial for both of us. Before being appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs in June 2017, Minister Kang was Ambassador at Large for Global Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. A seasoned diplomat, Minister Kang has an outstanding two-decade experience in multilateral diplomacy and holds a PhD in communication from the University of Massachusetts, two fields with complex ramifications which are being proved extensively by the challenge of the coronavirus. Minister Kang's two-decade experience in the multilateral domain distinguishes by the high-profile positions held within the UN system in the last 13 years as Assistant Secretary General or Under-Secretary General in charge with the sensitive fields of policy, human rights, and humanitarian affairs. Her Excellency also served as Chief of the Transition Team of the 9th UN Secretary General and Senior Advisor on Policy to the UN Secretary General. Previously, Madam Minister worked as Secretary for International Relations in the Office of the Speaker of the National Assembly, Senior Advisor and Principal Speechwriter to the Foreign Minister, and Principal Interpreter to the President of the Republic of Korea. Minister Kang has also an outstanding academic and research profile, being an Associate Professor at Cleveland State University and Sejong University. I will now give the floor to Her Excellency Minister Kang Kyung-wha, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, to share with us her vision on how to best adapt the instruments of diplomacy to the new context shaped by the pandemic. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
A very fruitful telephone conversation, and also your wonderful interview that you gave to our news agency, and your comments, just the fact of you having given that interview and that being published here has raised awareness of my participation in this very important meeting. And I think that's was a wonderful way to use our strategic communication to raise the awareness on the part of our people about the importance of the bilateral ties between our two countries. So thank you once again. And Minister Aurescu, distinguished colleagues in the Foreign Service of Romania, it is indeed a great honor to join you for this event. It is quite unusual, in fact, for me, in my experience as Foreign Minister of the Republic of Korea, to be asked to address the headquarters and overseas missions leadership of the Foreign Ministry of another country. But beyond this being a personal honor, I think it's a demonstration of the close relations that have developed between Romania and Korea and the wealth of goodwill and potential for the further thriving of the friendship and cooperation between our two countries and peoples in the future. This year, indeed, marks the 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Korea and Romania, and our presidents, President Moon Jae-in and President Klaus Werner Johannes, exchanged celebratory letters in March and voiced the hope that our strategic partnership will further thrive in the years ahead. And Korea is very honored and happy to be the first and the only strategic partner of Romania in Asia. This year, this partnership has been strengthened in the face of the current COVID-19 crisis. Romania has purchased Korean test kits, and NATO's cargo plane delivered protective suits from Seoul to Bucharest. Experts from our two countries also met online to share knowledge and expertise on battling this virus. And I do hope that this collaboration in the public health sector will continue to deepen beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. I think all of us on the front lines of foreign policy these days grapple with these global tendencies and challenges such as COVID-19 and how to adapt our diplomacy accordingly. This is an everyday part of our work. But this task has become much more challenging in recent years. The global order is in a flux, and the future looks very uncertain. We all struggle to navigate through the turbulent waters of our times, and the routes we are pondering are obviously different and diverse, largely depending on where our country is sitting. Even though the significance of space and time difference has greatly dwindled in our cyber age, geography still matters greatly. But over the decades, our peace, security, and prosperity have become deeply dependent on international norms that multilateralism has shaped for over decades. And this is under threat, and the threats are coming in many directions. The crisis is perhaps most keenly felt by those who work for international organizations in New York, Geneva, and other centers of multilateralism. And as you have noted, Minister, I should know because I was one of them for over a decade before taking up my current job. But the power to revive multilateralism lies not in the hands of UN officials, but in the hands of the member states. The erosion of trust in multilateralism and the rules-based international order has many manifestations and entry points for analysis: competition and clashes among the great powers, selective engagement or disengagement with international institutions by member states, the spread of populism and nationalism in domestic politics, weakening regional unity, and a very crowded and toxic information environment that is detached from facts and the search for truth. And since earlier this year, the COVID-19 pandemic has further exposed the vulnerability of existing multilateral institutions. Countries turned insular and closed their borders to protect their own populations from the virus. The divisive member states' dynamics at the WHO in the aftermath of the outbreak further undermined efforts to forge global solidarity. Each of the elements that threaten multilateralism has generated a plethora of analysis and discussion. But I think what concerns foreign policy actors the most must be the rising tension between the major powers. Indeed, what started in trade disputes between the United States and China has escalated into a rivalry that encompasses a whole range of issues in the economy, politics, security, public health, and values. The downward spiral in superpower relations has been very destabilizing for the international community, to say the least. My government's response to this challenging global context is being shaped along the following principles. First of all, we are faithful to the fundamental values and principles that define us as a vibrant democracy and market economy. These are openness, transparency, personal freedoms and rights, and the innovativeness of a free and creative people. I think the popularity of K-pop and dramas in Romania and many other countries illustrate our growing soft power based on the creativity of our people. We do not impose or preach our ways to others, but we are happy to share our experience as well as to learn from others and assist others. Second, we seek to expand the scope of cooperation all around, based on the values that define us. We are firmly committed to safeguarding and strengthening our security alliance with the United States, which has served as the cornerstone of peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. But we are also committed to further developing substantial ties in our strategic partnership with China. The growing US-China competition and the dwindling space for problem-solving dialogue between them makes this a very tough task. But we believe much leverage lies in our geopolitical position and growing capacities, and we are endeavoring to solidify the areas of shared interest with the US, China, and other neighboring countries. Third, we have no other goal than to live in peace and co-prosperity with others. Thus, in pursuing the Korean Peninsula peace process to bring about North Korea's complete denuclearization and lasting peace, we are grounded on the three principles of no war, mutual security guarantee, and co-prosperity. And while we maintain a watertight defense posture, we seek dialogue and peaceful engagement with North Korea. The road ahead looks arduous in this effort to get North Korea to completely denuclearize, to replace the 7 decades-old armistice with a former peace treaty, and to build a prosperous future for all Koreans, especially when the dialogue is stalled as it currently is. But we are staying the course, unshaken in our belief that peaceful engagement is the only way forward. Fourth, we are firmly committed to shoring up multilateralism. COVID-19 has exacerbated the divisive trends that undermined multilateral cooperation, but it has also made clear how interdependent and vulnerable we are and the urgency of multilateral action to overcome it and to prepare for the next global health crisis, because it will definitely happen. But we are realistic and clear-eyed rather than merely aspirational in thinking of the future of multilateralism. Many call for an overhaul of the United Nations, which is the embodiment of universal multilateralism. Indeed, UN reform has been around for decades, but the progress has been slow and uneven. Where reform is needed the most, that is, the Security Council, progress has been nil, and it is hard to be hopeful about the progress in the foreseeable future. But we can channel our reform efforts to those areas where the benefits to our peoples would be most immediate. And the WHO is certainly one such entity. And the WHO's technical and scientific expertise should be prized, respected, and enhanced. So much rides on the WHO's independent review panel that has been launched to review the global response to COVID-19. We also hope to actively contribute to serious efforts to update the international health regulations with stronger compliance tools. And that brings me to COVID-19 in my country. Korea's fight against the virus has been widely lauded, and I am deeply proud of and grateful to my public health and disease control colleagues who have indeed been doing an excellent job. And 9 months into the crisis response, they remain as dedicated and energetic as they were in the initial weeks. During the recent weeks, we have experienced a second wave, which started in the metropolitan Seoul area and spread to other regions of the country. And for a while, it looked as if Korea's reputation as one of the best in the world in tackling COVID-19 could unravel. But by ramping up our testing, tracing, and treatment capacity, we are well on our way to flattening this curve as capably as we had the much higher first curve in February and March. But we are not writing off the possibility of more waves as the cooler season approaches. Indeed, I should think that no country should, because this is a very persistent and tricky virus that will be with us for a long time to come. I think our robust capacity in the 3 T's, the testing, tracing, and treatment, is credited for the effectiveness of our COVID-19 response. But they are only the material manifestations of the principles that have guided the work. That is openness, transparency, i.e. full disclosure, civic participation, and innovativeness, which are the same principles that define us as a country and that have won us public trust in government action. These are also the same principles with which we have engaged with partners to forge bilateral and multilateral cooperation against the virus. Instead of closing down our borders, we have kept them open as much as possible for international travel. We have fully shared our information and experience with COVID-19 with the global health community and have extended material and knowledge assistance to those who came calling. And as in the domestic context, trust is the key ingredient in global crisis response. In closing, Korea and Romania are distant neighbors, but close and trusted partners with shared values and outlooks, and the wide scope to expand substantial cooperation and co-prosperity. At a time of waning global leadership in the midst of superpower rivalry, middle powers such as Romania and Korea are expected to play a more active role. In doing so, we need to be constructive and astute, motivated by enlightened self-interest and shared interest, knowing that our peace and prosperity depends greatly on global cooperation and solidarity. And in the process, our 2 countries will have much to discuss and share, and I do hope that today's interaction will prove to be an important milestone in this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for this insightful and very interesting presentation. And thank you so much for the very kind words for Romania and for my colleagues. This ends the public part of this session. Aici se încheie partea publică a acestei sesiuni. And now I believe we are ready to take a few